Welcome to Mystical Messages. I am Hilary Harley, your podcast host. I am a soul guide and astrologer. Mystical Messages is your podcast gateway to discover and learn about the realm beyond the veil, including all things intuitive, metaphysical, and the healing arts. Today, I am so delighted to have my very special guest back on the show, Cathy Ripley Greene, to explore and discuss the topic of extra senses that we each are born with, and we can learn how to develop and cultivate them. So, Cathy, welcome back. Thank you for joining me.
You. It's so fun to be back. Oh, just like you, Hilary, I just love sharing knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. It's important that we offer a platform for people to explore topics that are interesting and of interest and maybe passionate, spark a little passion in them, but they don't know where to find more information. So That's right. We're here to help you like a big library, audio library, to help you find and connect you to the right resources. So I just want to begin with some funny stories that both of us have experienced on our journey in as practitioners, as healers, in the metaphysical practices that we have. When we go out into the lay world, our neighbor's 4th of July backyard barbecue, and you meet somebody that you haven't, you're being introduced to for the first time, and he or she says, "So what do you do for work?" And this comes up in conversation quite a bit on my show, Mystical Messages, because people starting out on the journey, are often in different fields and industries. And I myself worked for the government and for the healthcare industry for a long time before I became an astrologer. So what the responses are when people at a cocktail party or just, chit-chatting and waiting for an airplane, what do you do for work? And the responses that we get. So I have a neighbor and we're on very good terms. We're very friendly with each other. But, when she first introduced me to her husband, after I told her I was an astrologer, she said, "Yeah, this is Hilary, the fortune teller I was telling you about."
Oh, my word. Oh, my word.
And, astrology is pretty cerebral, and there's a infinite canon of knowledge, and people with doctorates are proud astrologers. And so, I didn't take offense, but I actually thought it was rather endearing because of who she is as a human being. So, but
So you're a fortune teller.
Yeah. So, the image that it conjures, and I know you've had a similar experience.
Oh, my word. So, well, first of all, people will say now, so this, but your listening audience doesn't, that, I do have my doctorate. I was a practicing chiropractic physician for 27 years.
Yeah.
But I have, let's see, I have an AA, a BA, a BS, and a DC. There's a lot of knowledge in this brain, a lot of studying and such, So I've got my creds, right?
Right.
But this happens quite frequently. And then I want to tell you one specific funny thing. So my husband and I will be somewhere and they'll say, "Oh, and it's always interesting to me that people even care to know, what do you do?" I guess it's just part of conversation. And typically for us, it's me looking at my husband and my husband looking back at me. And sometimes my husband saying, "Go ahead and tell them," and sometimes I'll say, because I can sense it, I work in the field of supporting, grief or something like that, and sometimes I come right out with that, "I'm a medium," But one time, this was hilarious, Hilary, a colleague and a dear friend of mine, Robin, we used to do mediumship groups together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she has since moved to Utah, so we can't quite do that any longer because I'm here in Massachusetts. But so one night we were having this group. It was February, and we sort of would just sit in front of the group, and people would come in and sit down and take their seats. And this lovely man, I do remember his name happened to be John. I don't know how I can still remember it years later, but so he was a little bit like nervous and uncomfortable, and he started chatting away with us, and we were having a lovely conversation. And then he said, "Well, what are the mediums like?" And Robin and I looked at each other. We realized that he didn't realize that we were the mediums,
Oh boy.
And so then we decided, let's have a little fun with this, And so we said, "Well, they're really, they're very interesting. And when they come out, they wear turbans and robes, and they're gonna use a crystal ball, and then we just started laughing, and we're like, 'Sir, we are the mediums,' And he was like, 'Oh, I had no idea.'" And
Ta-da!
literally, Hillary, like it's like they expect somebody like Madame Corsinka,
Yep.
to come out, with
Yep.
some big earrings and whatever. So it is funny, people's impressions. But guess what? You and I know this. This is normal. These senses that we have that people think are like so crazy different in us, everybody has them.
Yes. Yes. We are all born with physical and metaphysical senses.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of it the way I think of it, and it might be easy to explain to folks listening, that it's like um, the scale on a piano. There's octaves, and there's a lower octave and a higher octave. So, and it doesn't make one better or worse or more difficult. It's, if you think of the deep bass on a piano versus the high notes on a piano, it's all the same, going the same direction, and it's just different tunes and frequencies that we're tuning into.
Yeah, I agree.
So, let's just dive in and explore these. First, we have the physical senses: vision, sight, hearing, taste, touch, and obviously smell,
Mm-hmm.
scent. So, with the extra senses, do you want to describe your experience?
Sure. So, I believe that everybody has these extra senses, or we could call them psychic senses.
Right.
And I like to refer to them as senses of the soul, if you will. Call them what you want to call them, they exist. I wish that when we were young kids, I actually, Hillary, I don't know if you remember, I don't remember learning about sight and smell and hearing. You just sort of know it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I wish, though, that they had sort of encouraged it, because you and I both know that the little ones, the children, they're having these experiences, but nobody
Yes.
explains it, or, and then if they do have some extra senses. So for me, I just knew some stuff, but I didn't know I was knowing anything. It was just
Right.
me, I
Right.
didn't understand it. But I also find, I think you would agree with me, that sometimes, well, not sometimes, but most times, one of the extra senses comes maybe online sooner than the other. So for me, it was hearing, but
Mm-hmm.
what we call these the clairs, and
Yes.
so clair-audience.
Right.
So audio just meaning hearing, So I had that first because when I was quite young, I literally heard a voice in my head
Mm-hmm.
say to me, when you are older, you will be psychic. But I didn't know what that word meant, but it made me
Right.
very happy. So clair-audience. Now, you and I are going to clear something up right here, right now. When I'm connecting with spirit, when you're doing your intuitive work and such, we are not hearing Grandma, Millie saying, "Hello, Hillary, it's your grandmother." We're hearing it in our voice. So
Yes.
if you and the audience members just sat for one moment and said in their heads, "I'm listening to Cathy and Hillary."
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, they just did that, right? That's the mind's voice, or your inside voice, or your
Mm-hmm.
head voice, if you want
Mm-hmm.
to call it that. That's how we hear things.
Mm-hmm.
So I love talking about this because I think a lot of people are hearing things. psychically, like just kind of having some intuition, or mediumistically hearing from a loved one. And I think they're missing it because they say, "Oh, I made that up."
Right.
Or,
Right.
right?
Well, and that's, I mean, we could dive into this for ad infinitum,
Mm-hmm.
being taught to doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But first, before we get into that, I just want to run through the metaphysical extra senses, this
Sure.
higher, different octave of senses that we have. Um, there's clairvoyant, which I
Mm-hmm.
think people, in my experience, are the most familiar with that term
Yes.
because it's like through our mind's eye. Speaking of mind's voice,
Yes.
the voice in our mind. The mind's eye is a term that we're very familiar with. And what we see, like an image that comes across our screen in our head, it's not right in front of us, but it is something that is in our head. And so there's clairvoyance, clair-audio, which is hearing that you described,
Yep.
clair-sentience, which
Mm-hmm.
is feeling, emotional, very strong feeling, and then clair-cognizance, which is
Mm-hmm.
clear knowing.
Absolutely.
There's also clair smell and clair touch, clair taste.
Mm-hmm.
But for purposes of this conversation, I'd like to stick to clairvoyance, audio, sentience, and clair-cognizance because I think
Sure.
those are the most widely experienced and more mainstream, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with you. We call them the main senses and such. So, clairvoyance, and you are absolutely right. People are most, familiar with this. This would go back to Madame Corsinka.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You would go to the clairvoyant, because she would tell you your future because she could see the future. But
Right.
it's so much more than that. And you're absolutely right. It's that inner vision. And oftentimes, when I'm sharing knowledge with people, I will say, so keep your eyes open, and then I'll say, picture. And so for today, I'll say, picture a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will picture one pickle, a jar of pickles, a whole kosher dill, or half of one,
Right.
whatever, a little pickle chip,
Right.
that inner sight, and people will say, well, that's not inner vision, that's inner imagine. And I'm like, yeah, it comes from the place where our imagination is,
Right. Right.
it is literally inner vision. So here's an example of that. It's so simple. Um, so let's just say I say, hey, Hilary, I'm going to take you to lunch at my aunt's house because she would really like you to do her astrological forecast,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, okay. And then the day before we're going, I say, I'm going to pick you up. You've never been to my aunt's house before, so I'll take care of that. And you start thinking about going to her house, and all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of yellow, and you're like, well, I don't know why I'm seeing that, but I'm just making something up. So then I pick you up. We drive to my aunt's house. We go up the front steps, and you're like, oh my God. You go in the front door. Every room in her house is like painted yellow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
had this inner vision, a
Mm-hmm.
psychic hit, if you will, an
Mm-hmm.
impression of what where
Mm-hmm.
you were going. That's such a really simple, easy explanation. It gets so much more complicated, but when I'm doing a mediumship session, I may for example, the other day, you never know what you're going to see. I saw the image of this particular car, a Trans Am,
Oh,
and
wow.
my client was 23 years old. She was quite young. And I said, I'm seeing the Trans Am and I'm also seeing a Mustang. She said, oh, her father, who was in spirit, loved, loved, loved Mustangs, Mustangs, Mustangs. And her dream is to purchase an old Trans Am
Oh, wow.
and refurbish it. So you see,
Mm-hmm.
he from spirit was showing me his love of car and her love of a car. So
Right.
we can see things. We just have
Right.
to trust it.
Right. Yeah. Because I was going to say they don't make Trans Ams anymore.
No, they don't. And I mean, so you see these things, and if you are having all these connections anyway, listening to this podcast is just a sign to like keep going with it. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're not aware of these things and you've had stuff and you're wondering about it, then I always tell people get a little tiny notebook and start writing these hits, these connections down,
Yeah.
and it becomes your journal of proof. You're like, oh, on Thursday I saw butterflies, in my imagination. And then on Friday, I went to visit my grandmother and she was wearing a blouse with butterflies all over it.
Right.
Woohoo!
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That I want to really touch on the word imagination because it's so loaded in our Western culture where, oh, that's just your imagination. And we're taught to sort of dismiss it and doubt it. And actually, there are threads of truth. I think we're learning through the Matrix film and series that there are all different kinds of realities that
Yes.
coexist.
Yes.
And
Yes.
quantum physics is starting to
Yes.
prove a lot of this.
Right.
And that what may exist for one person also exists for another. And so we pick up on this. And one of the things I want to touch on as part of this conversation is we are truly beginning to learn in this time, this really historic, epic, pivotal moment that we are living in is unity, that we are all far more similar than we are different.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
the imagination and the intuition link us together.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. And think about it too in practical ways. Like if we didn't appreciate and work with our imaginations, we wouldn't have any art in our world.
or science.
We wouldn't have any science.
Right.
We wouldn't have these earrings, this shirt. Like it all comes from somebody's mind and their imagination and
Right.
what's being brought through them. In fact, the word medium, right? So let's say I'm an artist. Maybe my medium is watercolor.
Right.
But what I'm doing is I'm bringing forth this inspiration and I express it through the medium of watercolor,
Exactly.
and so it's so important what you just said. Yeah. Imagination is a good word.
Yeah, and I just, we're in Boston. I mean, you're closer to Boston. I've spent 35 years there, and I'm now in the Berkshires near New York State. But for years, the Red Sox were trying to break the curse, and I distinctly remember I can't remember which player it was, but they interviewed him after they clinched the World Series in 2004, breaking the curse. And he said he distinctly had this vivid dream where they were in the opposing team's city and they won it on a pitch. They won the game on a pitch. And, that also speaks to this intuition that we
Absolutely.
all have. And whether you're an athlete, an artist, a scientist,
right.
Albert Einstein's famous quote is that imagination is the gift and our instrument is really the knowledge, putting it to work for us. But we've reversed that in Western culture where we've made the knowledge that we do have the concrete effort and the work so much more valuable.
Right, right. Now, when did that come to him in a dream? Is that what you said about the
pitcher,
winning?
the Red Sox? Yes, that came to him in a dream the night before.
Yeah.
The series had begun, but they were still in like game 1 or game 2.
Okay.
And I think it went to game 7 in that series.
And they won. But here's the thing, too. The point is that he saw that in a dream, so he did have clairvoyance about it.
Right.
But it also came to him in a dream when he was down in those delta brain waves, where his conscious mind didn't fight it. His unconscious mind, while he was sleeping, just let it come right in. And
Right.
then when he woke, he's like, whoa. So that's how it works,
Right.
sometimes. Yeah. So you can have this vision through a dream. You can have
Mm-hmm.
this clairvoyance in a waking moment. You can have it in a meditation. It just happens. You can ask for it to happen and see
Right.
what, there's all kinds of exercises, but I agree with you. It's one of the most like well-known ones.
Right. And we say the phrase just sleep on it when
Yep.
we've got a problem
Yep.
or something that we're trying to resolve, bring resolution to, and see how you feel in the morning. And
Yeah.
it's amazing what percolates about our dream state because we let go, we surrender,
Right.
and the
Let go.
consciousness.
Yeah. And I know you know this, but I'll say this maybe because somebody in your listening audience does not, but psychologically speaking and neurologically speaking, we are told that about 80% of our dreams are it's like our brain and our mind working together to file things away and figure things out and let them
Mm-hmm.
settle. And then there's that 20% that's sort of like the other part where things are being worked out and messages are being given to us, and it's fantastic,
Right.
so dream away.
Right. And it doesn't stop. I think that's what the gist of this conversation is. That does not stop during our waking
That's
moments,
right. That's right.
but we get preoccupied or
Yep.
distracted by the day-to-day routines or emergencies that come up and the things that are just must be attended to
Absolutely.
during the waking
Absolutely.
hours. But
Hmm.
the clair senses, these metaphysical extra senses, do not shut off during the day.
Nope, they're always there. They always can be approached and engaged in, and they're very, very helpful for me also because my first one and my main one, and the one that I really depend on a lot, is the clair-audience. And
Mm-hmm,
it is
mm-hmm.
clear hearing. And I mean, it is clear. So you might just hear a word or
Yep.
a phrase, or for me, because this is my work, this is what I do professionally, this is what I've been, like I used to say, I am a medium. I was practicing as a chiropractic physician, that's what I did. This is who I am, kind of a
Correct.
thing. And so the clairaudience, for example, last week, I was having full on conversation with what I refer to as my main spirit guide.
Right.
And that's a conversation for another day. But I mean, full sentences with me asking a question and then hearing a reply. And
Mm-hmm.
typically my question is, what do I need to know today? Like, what can you help me with? What can I learn from you today?
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be, so it can be a word, a phrase, a sentence, it can be a song, it can be, you hear it in your
Right.
mind, you
Right.
hear it. And most of the time when you hear it, um, you are either asking to or you're in some sort of a meditative state or whatever. But meditative states don't have to be, oh, like
Right. That's
you,
a whole conversation for perhaps another episode about
yeah.
the misunderstandings of what meditation looks, sounds, feels like.
Right, right, right. Because what we know, you and I, is that, when we are meditating, we're going into at least an alpha brain wave, Oh, yeah, we definitely have to have another conversation about this. But what I'm saying here is that if you're driving your car and you are just driving, especially on a road or going, traveling in a place where you know quite often, if you're in a nice warm shower, if you're in a hot tub, if you're lying on the beach, you're sitting on, when you're relaxed, you can all
Mm-hmm.
of just sudden, boom, here comes a
Mm-hmm.
phrase in your mind. And some people have said to me that they've said to themselves, did you say something? Like, what was
Yep.
that?
Yep.
In your head, though, it's in your head, it's in your thought mind. Sometimes you do hear it outside of your head. You and I both know this, that's more rare.
Yes.
Clairaudience, clear hearing is what the
Yes.
word means.
Yeah, I'm very glad you explained that so thoroughly because I think particularly clairaudience is loaded for Western culture due to the psychiatric realm. and some of the connotations that have been associated with clair-audience. And, we're all hearing directions and guidance all of the time. It's like, oh, I need to get mayonnaise at the grocery store for the recipe that I'm making, that type of thing. And yet we don't necessarily distinguish the mundane from the spiritual guidance. So,
Hilary, you're so right. It's the same voice. Like I have been told before, like I'll just hear in my head keys, and I wasn't thinking where are my keys or I'm forgetting my keys, and then I'm like, oh, and I say thank you. Here's what happened to me years ago. So now I'm in my early 20s. I'm just out of college. I took a full-time job, and this young man that was still in school, that was a friend. This was sort of all happening. I was coming into the understanding of the energy I was hearing. And he literally said to me, Cathy, I would like to take you to the hospital. And I said, yeah, what? He's
why?
like, you're hearing voices. And I
Oh,
said to him, no, 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 no. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I'm not hearing voices like telling me to do like psychiatric, like I need help
right.
voices. Now listen, Hilary, that's an important point because we can have psychiatric issues,
Right.
but that's not what we're talking about here. And I
Correct.
said to him, I need to assure you that these are not voices that, and he actually mentioned that to me more than one time, and interestingly, he went on to be a medical physician, so he had that slant, anyway. But yeah, you're you're not crazy.
Right, right, right.
But you are hearing voices, but it's your own,
Correct,
yeah.
correct. And that's a really important distinction that I want to emphasize, is that we're all receiving guidance. And whether it's visual, auditory, sentience, and sentience, I'm particularly attached to.
Uh-huh.
As a Cancer the crab, which rules feelings.
Okay.
And we all know clair-sentience when we're walking down a dark alley, particularly as a female, and it's like that spike that goes from your groin to your stomach to your heart to your throat. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely. Danger, Will Robinson. Yeah,
exactly.
right. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. But you know
So,
what? It's an important one because so I distinguish there's actually two feelings. There's the emotional feelings that you can
mhm,
get in the
mhm,
sentience, and there's the physical feelings that you can get. And
mhm.
when you're walking down a dark alley, especially like you said, as a woman walking by herself, you can have both the emotional feelings and the physical
Yep.
feelings. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And they serve us well. They serve us well.
Yeah, those are survival. I think
Hmm.
clairsentience is probably, I don't want to make this chronological, but it's probably the oldest because
Hmm.
it's the fight or
Very
flight,
primal. Yeah, very primal.
very
Yeah,
primal. And
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, we
Yeah,
and we know where danger is lurking or where, oh, this tastes really good and I need,
yeah,
or it
absolutely.
feels really good, I should say, and I want
Absolutely.
more of this.
Absolutely. And when we swing it a little bit into the intuitive or psychic realm, we would say things like you're going into a workshop and you stand at the back of the room and you take a look around and you feel like you want to go sit over there,
Mm-hmm.
and you go sit over there and you feel this lovely energy from the person sitting next to you, and you become in a conversation and you end up being friends or something.
Yep.
And the opposite can be true. You go into some place and you're like, ooh, oh, like the energy in here just, oh, and you
Yep.
leave because it just doesn't feel, good.
Right. Oh, how many times have we experienced that? No matter what field or practice you're in, it's like And children are
Oh,
particularly tuned in to
spot on they are.
clair-sentience.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
absolutely. And it can be like you said, it can be a person, a place, a thing, that you just feel, this sense about. And for me too, like when I'm working with spirit, like in a formal session, my thoughts are physically, I might say, and was there something happening in their throat? Yes,
Mm,
and I might say, boy, I'm having a pressure on my chest. Did they have a cardiac issue? Yes, but this is more specific to working as a medium. But now, even though I am a medium, I'm just Cathy first. So here's an example. One day, this was some time ago, my husband and I decided it was a Saturday, we're going to go to the movies, and it was happened to be a midday movie, you know. And so I was just laughing in my head because I'm thinking, because there was hardly any people if you went to a midday movie, because I
right.
don't like sitting in a big crowded room. But anyway, so we get, in the car and we're driving, and out of the blue, in 1 second flat, I got this headache. And I'm like rubbing my temples and I'm doing so, and I'm just like, what is going on here? And then I said to my husband, do you have a headache? And he's like, I do. It's been here all morning. And I realized it wasn't even my headache.
Oh,
I
wow.
was picking up, and that is clairsentience, picking up the physical,
Yep. Yep.
I've been in a restaurant before where I'm like, oh God, I sat down, ordered my meal. My back is, oh my God, I feel my stomach. I've got to go. Can I take my food to go? You leave the restaurant 2 minutes down the road, you're fine. You were picking up stuff, from,
Energetically.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Energetic patterns for sure. And animals in particular,
Yes.
like children, animals they know when somebody comes in your house and they are not good news, or
That's right.
conversely, they're the greatest thing that ever happened. So,
Right. And also, how about when you're not feeling well and they come right up and
oh,
snuggle up to you? And
oh,
let's even say you have a right-sided hip pain
yep,
and they snuggle right up to your right side hip.
yep,
Like they're super psychic, they're super plugged into their clairs. Guess why? Because these are natural senses that we all have,
yep.
and we just don't realize it. So, why are you and I wanting to share this with people? Here's the basic reason. Because when you know you have these senses, you can rely on them more, you can use them more, you can apply them more,
Yeah.
and you can feel your own self feeling more centered and guided and supported. So, it's just an improvement.
Right. It's a new and improved upon version of who you already are. It's not that you're becoming somebody else.
Mhm.
It's these are traits and senses to be developed and cultivated, applied and used.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Hilary, I also wonder if there might be a listener or two who have been having experiences who thought, "Oh God, what's this? It's so strange." And
mhm,
and we might be able to, by this conversation, just sort of explain to them, "No, no, no, you're normal."
right. You're totally normal. And I can guarantee the two of us have gone through it. And many, many other people, whether they're in our field of work or not. These are senses that can be used. It's no different than a mathematician or a scientist. It's like you're weeding through what is not useful to what is useful. And how do you determine that? It's discernment and deciding what is useful based on your intuition and then
Mhm.
applying that through trial and error.
Absolutely.
So that's very much what it is. And then there's clair-cognizance, which is clear knowing.
Yes.
Um,
Clear knowing is spectacular because when you know, and
like a
you
good
know.
egg or a good orange.
Yes, absolutely. Because we can apply all these senses to like the most natural of things. I just know that I am never going to buy a different kind of hand lotion because I love this one. It serves me really, really well. But
Mhm.
also, with a knowing like, no, I just I don't want to go. Like, I just don't want to go, And so you don't go. And then you find out that something happened at the event and you're glad that you missed that or whatnot. Or you
Right.
just know that you shouldn't sign this contract, or that you
Should take a
should.
different road to work because, right.
Exactly. Years and years and years ago, my husband and I had our wellness center, and we were ready to hire someone to work the front desk and make the appointments and all that. So we did this. We had a bunch of applicants, and we whittled it down to 6 or 8 of them, and then we had the interviews all set up. So the first interview came in. It's a woman named Ellen, and we sat down and we chatted, and I loved her, and I thought she was fantastic. And as she was leaving the interview, she said, "Oh, and by the way, if you're going to check my references, my maiden name is Greene, with an E at the end, and my name is Greene."
Is green, right.
Yeah. And so so she left, like, "Oh, thank you." And I said to my husband, "We're hiring her, and I know she's the right person." And he's like, "We can't hire the first person that we interviewed." And I said, "Oh, yes, we can." He's like, "Well, let's interview everybody else." And actually, there was another woman that would have fit in beautifully, and she was actually more qualified. And she actually was from the town where my practice was. She had grown up there, so she knew a gajillion people, which she could refer into the practice. But I knew that the other woman, Ellen,
Yep.
was the right pick. Picked
Yep.
her. She was so loyal. She never called in sick one day over like
Wow.
22 years. She was amazing.
Right.
And so I knew.
Yep. When
And
you
then you
know,
gotta
you
trust it.
know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great line in I'm gonna forget the name of the movie now. Oh, A Beautiful Mind, where, talk about scientists.
Oh boy.
And
Yep. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
they're dating, the couple is, they're still in the courtship process, and they're at a party, and she says, well, how do you know about love? And it's like, well, that's an intuitive feeling. Absolutely, when you're with the right person. That
Right.
is very much a spiritual guidance. And
Right.
an example from my life, I have to say, my parents used to live in Florida, and they're long past now, but at the time they lived in Florida, and it was, I'd say, June, the month of June, and I was like, I have to buy a ticket to go see them. I'm going to take the girls, my daughters, and go see my parents in August. And my husband was like, August, what are you doing in Florida in August? It's, the worst time of month to go. It's rainy and it's blistering hot. Well, my father had gotten ill, and, that was the trip where I said goodbye to him. And
Yeah.
if I
Mm.
hadn't gone, it would have been very rushed, very last minute. And instead, we had time with him beforehand, and
Yeah.
it was a very wonderful experience. But I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she said she was driving to the grocery store, and she had a full list of clients for the day, and she got to a red light, and it was like this wave came over her. She said she had to turn around and go to see this friend of hers, and it turned out the friend's mother had just passed. And it was like this unbelievable, certain knowing that she needed to be with this person, and she had to cancel her clients for the day and whatnot. But her mother had died very abruptly and suddenly, and she was being called to.
Absolutely. And if that doesn't show the connection through what we call the ether or the
Right.
atmosphere or the energy waves, just like you are recording a podcast and we are meeting, through Wi-Fi waves, and we could turn on the radio and listen to radio waves and cook our food with microwaves. It's
Yep.
all waves of energy, and they're all connected. Hilary, I mean, I have a similar story. 2 years ago, I said to my husband, we need to go see your father and mother, and they live in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. And I was scheduled to go to California in late February. I said, I'm canceling California, and we're going to Texas. And he's like, okay. So we went to Texas, and his father had been ill. We went to
Mm-hmm.
Texas. We had a nice visit, and I said, I know that this is the last time I'm going to see your dad, and I know that you're going to be coming back soon.
Wow.
So, and actually, it was literally we were flying home on March 3rd, right when all the COVID stuff, started to happen.
Oh boy.
We're at the airport watching the news, going, "What?" And so, sure enough, I didn't go back. He went back in May, spent 10 days, and his dad passed. We know what we know, but here's the magic in it. We must listen. And I'm going to use a word that a lot of people don't like. It's the word obey. We
Mm-hmm.
must not obey anybody who tells us to do. We must obey the little tickle in our mind, the thought that comes in, the
Mm-hmm.
knowing, the
Mm-hmm.
vision, the hearing. If we obey it, we will always be served well.
Yeah.
And I used to say we'll be rewarded. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is if we listen and we are divinely inspired and we take the action that feels right, we will have done the right thing, like go to visit your dad,
Right.
to get to see him and say goodbye and such. And another knowing, I'm just going to stick this one in here. The first day that I met my husband was in a classroom many, many years ago, taking some science classes and such. And I walked into the room and I surveyed the room. Where do I want to sit? Where do I feel comfortable sit? Where do I feel drawn? And I said, there's something about that guy. And then there was something about this other guy. And I'm like, well, Craig became my husband. And the other guy was my roommate for some years in chiropractic college. Just a knowing. And you
Mm-hmm.
just trust it.
Right.
And if you don't trust it, you just write down in your little journal of proof, oh, I knew something and then it happened. Wow.
That I really like the journal of proof
Mm-hmm.
because that is a tangible resource that anybody can use. It costs nothing to buy a little moleskin or, spiral bound notebook, for $1.50 at
Yep.
CVS or your grocery store to
Right.
just track your experiences where you can show yourself. It's very similar to a dream journal. I tell my
Yes.
clients you don't have to write down every dream you have every night, but when you write down and make note and chronicle the really big landmark dreams, it's amazing as a resource to go back and look at what was happening in your life and how that dream foretold or played into or shifted something for you.
Right. Right.
And this is very similar to use as a resource and talk
Mm-hmm.
about, that's science 101
Yeah.
is taking notes and
Absolutely.
showing
Observing, right? Mm-hmm.
observation, good old fashioned observation and note taking.
I love that. I love that putting that together because science, we're using science as a language to help us understand things and explain things.
Right.
I call it the JOP, the Journal of Proof. And one of my friends actually made me this journal, and it's called Things I've Heard from Spirit That Nobody Would
Oh
Believe.
boy, that's a book waiting to happen, honey.
That's right. And Hilary, to your point about the dreams, last night I woke up, I don't know, it was about 3:30 or 4 in the morning because my husband was making some noises and I could tell he was having a very active dream. And I woke up from a dream where in my dream, in the moment, I was dreaming about myself and these two sort of kind of monkey creature, kind of monkey things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in my dream and then I heard him sort of fighting or something. And so I woke up and I said, it's okay, honey, you're just having a dream. He woke up and started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He goes, I was just having the weirdest dream about monkeys. So I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on
Oh
here?
my gosh.
And this happens with us not every night, not every week, but one night he dreamt about a ship, and I'm like, I dreamt about a ship.
Wow.
And it's kind of like we haven't ever really been able to, but there's a sharing, there's a
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you're life partners and you've spent so much time together. You're
right,
so
absolutely.
linked. So that is an amazing discussion. And I am so glad you joined me today to talk about these clair senses, because we're just beginning to scratch the surface
Right.
of our understanding that how we can use and apply the clairs, whatever you want to call them, the extra senses, the higher octave of our being, that connect us through to each other and through the ethers. It's very similar to waves, TV waves, radio waves, computer, cyberspace. It's all the same thing. These are just different frequencies.
That's right. Frequencies. And again, I just want to say that we really are sharing this information so that people can recognize that they have these senses, and we are encouraging them to understand and use it. Go online, research them some more, find out, see what you're mostly connecting with, and at one point or another, they all come online. They all do. Yeah.
Exactly. And I love the term "they come online," meaning you awaken to them, or they become more obvious to you, and how you can, I can rely on that as one of the tools in my toolbox.
Right.
And make it put it into practical function, rather than thinking, oh, this is something weird, or to doubt. Because I just want to close with what you had touched on before, which is, the obey and the trust and the faith, those three words, with using and relying on these extra senses. Because so often when we don't trust them, how often can we say, oh, I coulda, woulda, shoulda trusted. I just knew that was a bad, egg, or I should have trusted that bad vibe I had about this person, or I knew I should have bought that lottery ticket because,
And Hilary, that's a good point, because even though you and I are very aware of these senses, we're very comfortable when we use them, I still sometimes go against my better judgment and my intuition. And,
we all
what
do.
happens? We're normal. It's human,
Right. That's the game of life. It's trusting, learning to trust through trial and error of experience. And so that brings us to the end of this episode of Mystical Messages. I want to thank you, Cathy, because this has just been a joy to have this discussion. And I invite everybody to please join me again in 2 weeks, when I will bring you my astrology forecast for the upcoming month. So again, if you want to get in touch with either of us, please see the show notes for this podcast episode. Cathy is available at Cathy with a C, Greene with an E, Cathy Ripley Greene, GREENE.com. And thank you so much for being my special guest today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And please enjoy your day, and I wish you blessings as you journey forward.